Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I want to share with you all my thoughts on the abilities that have been revealed so far for the Dark Knight, one of the new jobs coming in Final Fantasy XIV's first expansion, Heavensward. Just like with the last 11 videos I've done, all this information comes out of the French Media Tour and the Live Letter 21. There's sources in the description of the video, so you have plenty of reading material over the next couple of weeks while we wait for the official launch. But anyway, let's get right into the Dark Knight, because this is one I've been excited for a long time. So something I failed to do in my Astrologian video, and I should have mentioned this, I should have been mentioning this since the first one of these new job ability videos, is that the cross-class skills. There are cross-classes for the new jobs. The new jobs do not offer cross-classes to any of the other jobs, however. So Dark Knight is going to be taking a Gladiator and Marauder. Some people were convinced maybe they would get Thaumaturge, but no, they're going to be getting Gladiator and Marauder, so expect your standard, probably Bloodbath, Foresight, Mercy, Stroke. Probably expect to have to use Provoke, maybe Awareness. There's basically, you have quite a few options between Gladiator and Marauder as your cross-class abilities. And while we're on the topic of Gladiator and Marauder, we should probably start talking about the abilities with the basic combos. I did this for Astrologian too, where these combos or these abilities are very relatable to the other jobs. So for your basic Enmity generating combo, akin to the Butcher's Block combo, you have Hard Slash into Spin Slash into Power Slash. Nothing too special going on there. It's really in the other combo where you start seeing some more interesting aspects of the Dark Knight, and especially because of how important MP is to the Dark Knight, these other two combos are probably way more important than your basic Power Slash combo. So you have Hard Slash as the same opening ability for all of your combos, but then it can go into Siphon Blade, and Siphon Blade is like Riot Blade. It restores some MP, and like I said, MP is very important for the Dark Knight, and I'm going to be stressing that a lot in this video, so apologies ahead of time if it sounds redundant, but MP is a super important thing. And Siphon Blade is then going to go off into two different abilities. You have Soul Eater, which is going to restore some MP, and then you have Delirium Blade, which is going to debuff the target in some way. They didn't want the company sharing exactly what Delirium Blade did, apparently because Delirium Blade is still undergoing last-minute adjustments. Just know that it is going to be some sort of debuff. I mean, you can relate that to, you know, Storm's Eye, Storm's Path, Rage of Halone. It's gonna be somewhere around that area, so just expect it to enhance some sort of debuff. I wonder if there's any other translations out there, because I'm looking at 3 or 4 different translations right now as I'm reading that off to you, and all I can find is the combo has a debuffing effect which weakens the enemy somehow. That can mean a number of things, but I'm sure that tanks out there will be pretty used to going through these different combos, maintaining debuffs. That's kind of something that's standard of almost every job in the game. So that's familiar territory. It's the rest of the Dark Knight's kit that may feel like unfamiliar territory. So let's switch gears into that. So two of the most important things when it comes to the Dark Knight is the Grit stance and the Dark Side stance. Now, there's, again, a ton of different names, Dark Side, Darkness, but there's a lot of different names going around for all these abilities. They all have the word dark in it. So I want to clear up some of the confusion about these different stances. So first of all, you have Grit, which is your standard tank stance, reduces the damage you take or something along those lines, just like Shield Oath and or Defiance, you know, increases enmity gain, all that fun stuff. Now, there's been some confusion going on amongst the community who's already been aware of this news, and that's of the ability Darkness or Dark Side, whatever name they end up going with, and that's a DPS stance that the Dark Knight can take on that slowly drains your MP to enhance your attacks. It also has the effect that you cannot generate MP from other sources outside of your own skills while it is active. So things like Ballad or potentially any abilities that might be implemented to restore ally MP like Machinist turrets and whatnot. So it's literally just, it negates you from gaining MP from sources other than your own abilities. Now, the confusion with this is a lot of people thought Dark Side would cancel out Grit, or I'm just going to call it Darkness, whatever. Darkness would cancel out Grit. New information has surfaced that says that Darkness is not really an opposite to Grit, and that it can be maintained alongside of Grit. So it almost sounds like Dark Knights kind of have the old warrior sense where you're either in Defiance or not in Defiance. So being not in Defiance would be your DPS stance back in the day, but well, back in 2.0, we still are in 2.0 as of this video. Sounds like Dark Knights are going to follow similarly, but they have the ability to enhance their damage while they are still in this tank stance, which is cool. It just means that maintaining it at all times is going to be important, not just when you're off tanking or you're not taking severe amounts of damage. Maintaining this MP draining ability while using those MP regaining abilities is going to be a super important thing. And you're going to learn this ability right at level 30 according to some of the news that we have here. So there's another thing, and this is, I guess, where the confusion gets even a little bit worse, because then you have Dark Arts, which is like Darkness, except that it requires way more MP consumption. So whereas Darkness you should be able to maintain for long periods throughout the fight using Siphon Blade and some of the other abilities we're going to talk about, Dark Arts is really to super enhance a few abilities. For example, it doesn't really raise your attack power, it kind of just enhances effects on certain abilities, and apparently there are some abilities that can only be used while in Dark Arts. It doesn't really give an example of the abilities that can only be used in Dark Arts, but there is Soul Eater, which we already mentioned before, which drains HP, excuse me. It'll enhance that HP draining effect. Abyssal Drain, which is another ability that's, I don't really see mentioned anywhere else here, unless it is, and I just haven't noticed. Abyssal Drain. Yeah, I don't really see anything else mentioned when it comes to Abyssal Drain, other than it's usable under Dark Arts and it has an HP drain affected to it. And then there's the defensive buff, Dark Mind, which works outside of this, but it says that it receives an increased amount of damage reduction, so that's another ability they'll have is Dark Mind, which is going to be one of their defensive abilities. While you're under Dark Arts, it reduces even more damage. So it's going to be a lot of MP management. It's not going to be like some other jobs where it's just it goes full to 0 and you wait for it to tick back up or you ask for a ballot or something. It's a lot about maintaining it and creating windows of strength and utilizing your MP in such a way that it either helps you survive better or it helps you deal more damage. It's definitely going to be an interesting aspect, and it does sound like it plays significantly different from the other two tanks, which are mostly about managing your TP, and TP is something that's pretty standard to every job other than the few casters in the game. So, whereas you might be more familiar with handling TP, which you're still going to have to do, you're going to have all these other options when it comes to utilizing your MP as a Dark Knight as well. It's going to add a nice dynamic that doesn't make it feel like you're playing the other two tanks, but again, can still fulfill the role in a meaningful way. But of course, the Dark Knight does have a bunch of other abilities. You know, they are a brand new job, not just getting 5 new abilities from 50 to 60. So they have a lot that we need to talk about. Let's go over some of the more basic things, things that you will see similar things to on other tanks, and then we'll go into the more interesting stuff. So right off the bat, you have Scourge, which is a dot on the target. Nothing too fancy, sounds very similar to Fracture. You have a self buff, a defensive buff called Shadow Wall, which reduces the damage you take, something that all the tanks have that's standard, used for those big hits or that consistent damage over time like in dungeons and whatnot. You have a single target stun ability akin to Brutal Swing called Low Blow. I was going to call it a Sparta kick to the face, but considering the name, I'd say it's aiming a little farther south. So just know that you have a single target kick that is a stun. And these next two abilities, I'm going to talk about the first one. This first one's nothing too fancy. It's called Unleashed. It's an AoE magic attack that increases Enmity. You know, think of it like Flash, Overpower, Steel Cyclone. AoE abilities that generate Enmity. Every tank job has them. Nothing fancy. But then you have the single target ability Unmade, which is a ranged ability that generates increased Enmity. So it sounds very similar to Tomahawk and Shield Lob. Nothing too fancy. You just saw it on your screen right there. But what's made unclear, they almost were comparing this other ability. You saw in the video how after he used Unmade, he jumped to the target. That's Plunge Cut. They almost made it seem like Plunge Cut was the standard Tomahawk Shield Lob replacing ability. But that doesn't make sense to me, because that sounds like it's a lot more annoying than just using Unmade. Like, look at this. Unmade, generate the Enmity, jump to the target. That's probably more akin to what you'll really be doing as a Dark Knight, if that is even efficient to do, outside of it just looking cool. Yeah, I'm glad they have a ranged Enmity generating ability. I was worried because so many people were saying Plunge Cut was going to be replaced. Like, instead of having Tomahawk and Shield Lob, they were just going to have Plunge Cut. I'm glad to see Unmade making it in, and will probably be a very important aspect of the Dark Knight when it comes to your opener, especially as a tank. So just wanted to point that out because of the things that were being said about Plunge Cut. Plunge Cut itself, when they jump to them, looks cool as hell. I'm wondering if that's like Shadow Tackle. Imagine that's what it was called. Shoulder Tackle, where it has like a 20-second cooldown or something like that. Or if it is spammable and you're going to see Dark Knights plunge cutting their way through dungeons. That would be pretty cool, but I don't see that happening. Either way, just wanted to really stop and talk about that ability because there was some confusion amongst the community. Let's go on to some of the cooler abilities now that really define the Dark Knight as unique. Now, this next ability, I was almost surprised that Paladins didn't get something like this, and I hate to make the comparison to World of Warcraft, but it's just such an easy thing to make a comparison to, where Paladins had a consecration ability that they would be able to put it on the ground and it would deal AoE damage, generate enmity, all that good stuff. Well, Dark Knights are getting a ground-targeted AoE skill that's positioned with the cursor. That's, you know, like Flaming Arrow or Shadow Flare, and it just does AoE damage. Just you put it down, it does AoE damage. It doesn't say if it generates additional enmity, if it has any other additional effects, but it's nice to have that ability to place an AoE away from the group, even if it just means, let's say that your off tank is tanking a bunch of adds and they're not tanking them near you for whatever reason. If you're just tanking one enemy and they're tanking like 4 or 5, you can throw down this Salt of the Earth to add some additional damage from a distance. I'm actually quite a big fan of that, something that the tanks can do. And of course, for AoEing, for speedrunning dungeons and whatnot, it's also going to be a great tool to just deal more damage on a consistent basis. Can never complain about options, you know, and this is, again, something that the other tanks don't really have. So it's another one of those unique things that the Dark Knight is going to bring. I'm sure that for the first month, people are going to think it's a bad AoE and move out of it, just like Flaming Arrow was with 2.0, but let's hope that that's not the case and Salt of the Earth ends up just being or actually it's called Salt the Earth, my bad, Salt the Earth. Salt of the Earth sounds so much smoother. Regardless, Salt the Earth, I hope that it ends up being a much utilized tool for the Dark Knight. Now, before I mentioned that there were more abilities than just Siphon Strike for managing your MP as a Dark Knight, and why I wasn't so concerned about Darkness, but more about how much you were going to be maintaining it between Darkness and Dark Arts. Well, here are 2 other abilities that they're going to have for MP regeneration, and these aren't the only ones at that. Blood Price is an MP recovery technique where every time you're hit, you generate some MP back. This sounds like a beautiful technique for speedrunning, and of course that's going to be good for raid scenarios as well. It's just nice to get something back when you get hit. You can never really complain about that. And apparently they have an unnamed ability which will allow you to recover MP from your own attacks. So it sounds like Bloodbath, but for MP, which is going to be cool considering you're going to be able to cross-class Bloodbath, so you'll basically just be regenerating HP and MP back at the same time, assuming the ability works like that. It may not work exactly like Bloodbath, it just sounds like it does from this description. Alright, the next ability on the list is one that I honestly have mixed feelings about it. It sounds pretty cool, but it sounds like a lot of effort to do something that the other tanks do already, and that's just my opinion on it, but let me know what you think. So, every tank has their super I'm not gonna die during this ability. You know, you have a Hallowed Ground, and you have Home Gang. People, you know, Hallowed Ground is pretty dominant when it comes between the two, but Home Gang does have the added effect of having a shorter cooldown, and yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages to both of them. Well, of course, Dark Knight's gonna have an ability like that, and their ability is called Living Dead, and they compare to the Home Gang from the Warrior, but the way it works sounds so strange. Okay, so the way it's been currently described to me from multiple translated sources, it gives you a 20-second buff. If you die during those 20 seconds, if you have your HP reduced to 1, actually, I believe is the exact wording, then you will enter a zombified state for 10 seconds where you cannot die. However, if you are not healed to full before the 10 seconds is up, you will die. It's basically delaying your death for 10 seconds. Now, the major drawback to this, because that sounds like a great ability, the 20-second window as opposed to the 10 and the 6 seconds of Home Gang, and then an additional 10 seconds on top of that. But you got to remember, so as soon as the effect is triggered, that 20-second window ends. And also, you have to keep in mind, if you ever reach full HP in that 10-second window, then the zombie effect goes away. You don't stay in the zombie effect for the whole 10 seconds. You only stay zombified for 10 seconds if you aren't healed to full, and then you would die immediately. So it sounds like a lot of work, and people have been like, oh, well, you can always benediction them, you can always spam lustrates or any... It's a lot more work than Hollowed Ground, don't do anything for 10 seconds. Or Home Gang, you know I'll be fine for 6 seconds, just make sure I don't die to an auto attack at the end of it. It sounds like in order to keep this person alive, you're gonna have to use a lot more resources. So I don't know if I'm a fan. Now, don't get me wrong, it could totally be in such a way where it can almost act as a Hollowed Ground, where you Benny them at the 9th second, and then that sort of acts as your way of guaranteeing mitigation for the entire duration. I don't know, it sounds like a lot of work and a lot of fancy ways to do things that the other tanks already do in easy to comprehend and easy to understand ways. It just sounds like an overcomplicated ability to me. It's cool, don't get me wrong, it's just, I don't know, it seems overcomplicated to me for a very, very simple feature. And of course, a lot of people are saying, why don't we give Dragoons this ability so they can get a second life? Listen, we're done with those days, okay? The days of the LOL Dragoon are done, all right? I'm declaring it now. Those days are done. The Living Dead jokes will stop. But in case you want to continue those Dragoon jokes, there's an unnamed ability, and this is another ability. I don't know. I don't like it for the Dark Knight. It's a 10 to 15 second buff you place on an ally, and it's got a fairly sizable cooldown, you know, between a minute or two. And if that ally dies in that 10 to 15 second window, you restore 20% of your HP and MP. That just seems like I would never want to just be like, oh, well, that person's dead. At least I'll get some HP or MP. Unless there are going to be mechanics that automatically kill somebody in the expansion, and this is a way of the tank benefiting from that, I don't see how. I mean, maybe it'll be good in the Duty Finder, because in the Duty Finder you have people who are not as experienced, and you know, from when you watch people play, you can kind of tell, okay, that person's probably going to die, so at least I can get something out of it. But I don't know, unless there's planned mechanics where you're absolutely going to be sacrificing people, I don't know how I feel about this as one of their, I guess I'll call it defensive abilities or defensive cooldowns. It's just strange to me. Maybe it'll be completely different by the time we get it in the expansion. I'm just currently not a fan of both Living Dead and this ability. And to be honest, other than Shadow Wall and the other ability I mentioned during Dark Arts, it doesn't sound like they have a lot of defensive cooldown. So either Delirium Blade is really, really good, and it's going to be similar to Disable from the Astrologian, or they're just so, you know, they just generate the HP back from things like Siphon Blade and it ends up being okay. It doesn't sound like they have a whole lot. Of course, these aren't all the abilities that we've heard, but I don't know. Like, they sound like they're a ton of fun to play. I want to know more about their defensive capabilities, though, because we're hearing a lot about offense, you know, MP, more damage, kick to the face, AoEs, all this stuff. I'm not seeing much in the way of defense, so curious to see what they haven't revealed to us yet for the Dark Knight. So let's see, I've covered Darkness, Grit, Dark Arts, Living Dead, Plunge Cut, Scourge, Unleashed, Salted Earth, or Salt the Earth, or Salt of the Earth, whatever the hell it ends up being called. Low Blow, Unmade, that unnamed ability where the person dies and you get the HP and MP back. Talking about Abyssal Drain, Dark Mind, the defensive cooldown that's enhanced under Dark Arts. Blood Price, which is you get the MP back whenever you're hit, and also an ability that will allow you to generate MP with your actual attacks. We have Shadow Wall as a defensive cooldown. Soul Eater is one of their combo abilities that restores HP even more under the Dark Arts. You have Siphon Blade to get MP back, Spin Slash, Power Slash for additional Enmity off the hard slash combo, and then you have Delirium Blade, which is still undergoing tunes. The only thing I guess I should have mentioned is their limit break. It is, of course, the tank LB3, but because of the thing they're doing in the expansion where all the jobs get their own animation, theirs looks like a bunch of slashes, apparently. It's called Ruinous Omen, according to the Famitsu translation, and they said they couldn't really talk about it too much. An ominous black sphere is created. Ruinous Omen, isn't that Diabolos' ability from Lost City? Or if it's not from Lost City, then it's definitely the name of his ability in Final Fantasy VIII. It's a defensive ability, that's all you need to know, but apparently it has a unique amount of slashes and whatnot, according to some of the other details we've gotten our hands on. Overall, Dark Knight sounds like an amazing amount of fun. I'm just curious about the remainder of their defensive capabilities, because their offensive capabilities sound like a lot of fun, a lot of interaction, a lot of really active thinking and resource management. So I think that's good. Again, I said this with Astrologian. I like the need to be constantly aware of what's best to do and learning when it's best to use certain things. I'm a huge fan of that sort of playstyle, and the Dark Knight, just like with the Astrologian, lives up to that, and a lot of the job's new abilities force them to live up to that. I want to know the remainder things. We still don't even know about traits. These new jobs have to have traits. Even if from level 50 to 60, the old jobs don't seem to be getting new traits, these new jobs have to have traits. So I'm sure that these abilities are going to be enhanced in some way, shape, or form. I just want to play them. It's 2 weeks. Come on. I just want to play them. It's June 4th. It's literally 2 weeks and a day. 15 days. Come on. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about the Dark Knight in the description or in the comment section of the video below. Remember, all the sources are in the description of the video. That's where I was going with that one. But anyway, guys, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next video for the Machinist. Until then, take care.